everyone. So this is my book club discussion post for Lisa Cooper's book, Why Are Health Disparities Everyone's Problem? This week we focused on chapter 6, and that was A Global Perspective on Health Equity. So I really did enjoy this chapter as we're making our way through the book. I thought that this one was kind of cool, looking at different applications and how we can kind of fit the mold of what we've learned through previous research and like what we do in the United States or different things like that, how we can kind of apply it across the globe while remaining culturally competent, I guess, is the best way to phrase it, but then also making sure that we make those adjustments when best needed. So I took some notes and then I'll kind of go through a couple things that I wanted to highlight from this chapter and go from there. So yeah. So I think it was in the first couple of pages it highlights almost what the main focus of the chapter is right away, and I really liked how it was phrased. So I wanted to bring that up. It basically says like the focus of this chapter is on the role of relationships across social, cultural, and ethnic differences and addressing those inequities. I thought that was really awesome that they talked about and kind of summed it up really well right off the bat. So with that, Dr. Cooper talks about different various approaches that are utilized throughout healthcare to kind of mitigate those health inequalities and inequities, the different disparities that we've seen and been discussing so far. So one thing that kind of stuck out to me that I know we kind of talk about a lot is in the United Kingdom, how they have a universal healthcare system, and even though they do have universal healthcare, there are still health inequities. So I think that it just kind of goes to show that because we are human and we do have to kind of go alongside the policies and the laws and things that are made, and unfortunately the restrictions of financial support, that we are limited and that inequities will probably always exist, but it does give us some insight on what we should be striving to fix and different areas that we can kind of take a look at more. I just know that that's common, something that's brought up when we talk about the healthcare system in the United States. So I thought it was cool that we talked about what the United Kingdom does, just to kind of give it a little bit of an overview. Yeah. So another thing that I noticed that was a very common, very important trend throughout this chapter was the intentionality of care and how we're going about disputing these health inequities in other countries. I know that Dr. Cooper did a really great job. One of my favorite parts of this chapter was when she went ahead and discussed different concerns that we have with academia and how they unintentionally are doing more harm in the name of publishing research and findings. So let me find that really quickly. Yes, so I was on page 159, and she kind of talked a little bit about institutions come into these communities to do studies, and they publish important papers, and they make financial deals with large pharmaceutical and biotechnical companies, but then they leave. And that's kind of the hard part, because they leave without ever coming back to share those results that they have found from these studies, or to help the communities that, help them with their findings. I think that that's really significant that that's highlighted. I know I've seen many things about that before, and the fact that she's able to kind of discuss it in the book is kind of like, yeah, we should do better as a academia in general. I know she then goes on to discuss, and we kind of talked about it in some of the previous chapters, how important it is to have those intentional care relationships. So I know before we talked about how important it is between like a physician and a patient, and in this case she talks about how important it is to have and establish strong, authentic relationships with partners in the communities that we are researching, and let them know that, as she says, we're in it for the long haul and not just for their own benefit. As in the world of public health and health in general, like, we want to make progress. So I thought that was really cool too. She talks about how important it is to physically be in the space and to see what's going on, just little things like that. Another thing that I thought was really cool was she talked about in overcoming different barriers to care, one of the solutions is to make services more accessible through like remote or like telehealth, doing things like on people's smartphones, because in this day and age, I know it was talked about a little bit that it's kind of almost a necessity to have a smartphone or like Wi-Fi internet access. So I know she talked about some of the apps that were created, how they would send out like SMS messages every few days about different healthy lifestyle behaviors, or different videos on like healthy living styles, which I thought was super cool. She then goes on to talk a little bit about how important it is to adapt what works based on the culture in the area that you're in. So, for example, in Ghana, even though she said that the app had been developed in Ghana, they had to change some of the terminology and motivational messages because it might have been unfamiliar and less successful. So, for example, she says instead of using the word lightheadedness, they changed it to feeling weak and dizzy, something that's a little bit more broad and understandable, like for their culture. She also did another example of changing headache to a pain in my head, which I thought was really cool that she was able to do that. She talks a little bit more about other areas or why remote access is important, because people, they live, in Ghana specifically, she talks about like the commute or the journey to get to healthcare clinics, and that traveling for hours on unpaved roads in rural areas is very unsafe. Also, the opposite problem, increased traffic due to overcrowding in urban areas. So I think it's really cool that she's able to kind of highlight the importance why remote and telehealth is very important, especially when we're doing research and trying to help in different communities. So those are kind of those are some of the main points that I wanted to bring up. And then also on the very last page of the chapter, on page 168, I really liked this quote. This is probably my favorite quote from the chapter. And it says, "I've been asked whether the motto of our international efforts is to think globally, act locally, or think locally and act globally." And then she kind of goes on to talk about why both is important and how you can't really have one without the other while being successful, and how important it is to find like a harmonious way for them to work together interchangeably. So I really enjoyed this chapter, and I'm excited to listen to everyone else's, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thank you.